Welcome to Eat, Sleep, Wine, Repeat, a podcast for all you wine lovers who, if you're like me, just cannot get enough of the good stuff. I'm Janina, your host, brand ambassador, wine educator, and sommelier. So stick with me as we dive deeper into this ever-evolving, wonderful world of wine. And wherever you are listening to this, cheers to you. Hello, wine friends, and welcome back to another episode. Today, I am taking you straight to what is now one of my favourite corners of Europe, the north of Portugal. We are talking Porto, the city of bridges, wine and great vibes, and then we are heading upriver to the Douro Valley, one of the most gorgeous wine regions on the planet. So if you've been dreaming about cobblestone streets, sunset views over the river, and sipping wine while surrounded by rolling green hills, this episode is for you. This is my 4-day itinerary. So I'm going to take you on my journey, which I did back in September earlier this year. And I will, of course, be talking about different styles of port, primarily on this episode, going into detail on Tawny and the different styles you get there. But do not forget, Portugal is all about choice. If you're not really feeling something sweet, just pour yourself a port and tonic. Just super refreshing. We all need to be drinking more port and tonic, or grab one of Portugal's many amazing dry table wines. Now, for a quick wine fact, or maybe more wine history fact of the episode, did you know that the Douro was officially the world's first wine region to be demarcated? To set the scene, I'm going to take you back to the Lisbon earthquake of 1755. This really devastated so much of Portugal, and King Jose I was so shaken by the disaster that he became ultra paranoid and basically went to live in a tent in the hills for 3 years. So he went mad. This was the moment when church and state separated, and the country was run by the king's prime minister, the Marquis of Pombal, who became the driving force behind major reforms in the country. And one of Pombal's priorities was the quality of port wine, which had been deteriorating due to growing demand. And so he demarcated the Douro Valley in 1756, creating the world's first officially regulated wine region. Apparently 335 granite stones were put around the region to create the vineyard boundaries, and there are in fact 103 still standing, so look out for them. There is also a famous saying from that time about what makes a good port, and it must be high in alcohol, sweet like Brazil, and as dark as ink to write with. I mean, this was a reference to its richness, its sweetness, and deep colour, and sweet like Brazil due to all that sugar that was coming in. In fact, Lisbon in the 16th to 18th centuries was super rich due to all that sugar coming in from Brazil. And on the theme of sweetness, if you are feeling sweet and enjoying the episodes, do pop across to the app that you are listening on and leave a review or some stars, which will help this podcast get into the ears of more wine lovers like yourself. So get comfy, pour yourself a glass of whatever you fancy, and let's dive into today's episode. Okay, let us start with Porto. First of all, the city has personality. It's old, it's colourful. Picture this, super narrow streets that twist up and down the hills, tiled buildings in all shades of blue. There's locals chatting outside cafes, and of course, you have the smell of fresh pastel de nata everywhere. This is basically heaven. And then there is the Ribeira. This is the old riverside district. This is where it's all kind of going on. This is Porto's magic, and you get the Douro River just sparkling in the sunshine. The boats are cruising by, and the iconic Dom Luís Bridge connecting Porto to Vila Nova de Gaia, aka the land of port wine cellars. So We're going to get to that with day one's itinerary, but we all need a place to stay. You could choose to be right in the thick of it by staying by the river, but the prices are higher and there is more noise. I felt like we found the perfect balance staying just opposite the Trinidad metro station. You can basically walk to everything in the old town, including the famous bridge. The Mercado de Bolhão is just over 5 minutes walk, and you want to be coming here for fresh and cooked food. You can get your pastel de natas and a coffee or a glass of wine with tapas. Stock up on canned fish. There is the most incredible ready-to-eat seafood platters that are so good they don't let you take photos, so you get it. And you are also just 5 minutes from the Avenue dos Aliados, which has the city hall, the famous Porto letters to have your photo, but there is ornate building facades, there's sculptures, but also, an even better reason to be right next to Trinidad Station is if you are coming from the airport by public transport, the metro from the airport gets you into Trinidad in 27 minutes. They run every 15 minutes or so, and we paid just over €2 a ticket. To be fair though, getting an Uber was so easy as well, and the cost, certainly between the old town and to Vila Nova de Gaia, was about €6. So maybe we should now talk about day one. Wake up slow, grab yourself some breakfast and head down to the river. Enjoy the music, the energy, get a coffee there and go up to the Dom Luis Bridge to look at the views. Now you can go and get a taxi, as I mentioned, but it is easy enough to walk across to the other side and you can enjoy the river from a different viewpoint, walking along the bank. So many port houses have bars and places to drink their wines along the riverfront. Now, we started at Graham's. From the bridge specifically, if you want to walk there, it's about 25 minutes. Most of it's flat, and then the last 10 minutes is uphill. And it is so worth visiting for its unique vantage point over the Douro River and Gaia. They have a terrace that wraps all the way around, so I would allow an extra hour alone just to enjoy a drink up there. You are going to enter this building that dates back to 1890. It is a chapel of wine, cool, dimly lit, and really heavy with history. The air, of course, has that sweet, kind of woody perfume. You are surrounded by row after row of aged oak casks, some over a century old, and barrels that are well over 80 years old. You're going to be able to learn all about how the coopers are still hands-on heroes. So many port lodges, including Graham's and the Symington family, who now owns Graham's and also Dow's and Cockburn's, they have their own coopers to repair the oak casks, which is essential. This is almost an everyday task. No new barrels are used for aging port. It is all about a slow, gentle exchange of oxygen and evaporation, which is about 1 to 3% over the course of the year. And this is called the angel share. Now, tawny port loses its deep ruby red colour, turning to garnet and then to tawny, which is ambery brown. And it's also so much paler as the colour of the wine fades as oxygen slowly works its magic in the barrel, resulting in a fortified wine that is now silky and layered with aromas and flavours of roasted nuts, dried fruits and caramel, spices. You can probably tell tawny is my favourite category of port. And so, seeing as I'm recording this and there is no one to stop me, we are going to discuss this category now. And especially as, whilst I was at Graham's, they told me all about their 80-year-old tawny. Have you heard of this brand new category of 2025? So apparently the 80-year-old tawny port category was born from a family celebration. I have already mentioned the Symington family. So they, if you do not know, are one of the most influential dynasties in the Douro Valley. Now, Charles Symington, he's the head winemaker for the Symington family, who owns Graham's, wanted to mark his father Peter's 80th birthday with something truly special. He blended some rare ports from the 1940s, but the IVDP, so that's the Port and Douro Wine Institute, only recognise age statements up to 50 years. So hence, you will have only ever seen in the past a 10, 20, 30, 40 and 50-year Tawny on a label. Well, until now. So the family made this 80-year-old port and everyone in the family loved it. And so they got the IVDP to taste it. And this totally deserved a category. So they created one, the first ever officially certified 80-year-old Tawny port. It is limited edition, only 600 bottles. And so no, I did not try it. And no, I did not buy a bottle either because it is about £1,600, 1,700. But you can imagine tasting a wine like that is comprised of so many barrels that were aged during World War II. I mean, this is why this trip was so spectacular for me. When you walk into these lodges, you are effectively stepping back into time. Now, what I did get to taste, however, was their 1990 single harvest Tawny port, which is the same thing as a Colheita port. So, just to tell you the difference, typically Tawny port is a blend of many vintages aged in wood, whereas Colheita, or as I said, a single harvest Tawny, is from one specific year. Now, the minimum time in wood for a Colheita is 7 years, but normally it is for a much longer time aging before release. But we have to do a quick Tawny lesson, so anybody who doesn't know is caught up to speed. You can get basic Tawnies, and they might be aged for just the same amount of time as a standard ruby port, so sold around 3 years of aging or younger. But a reserva Tawny has to be aged for a minimum of 7 years in wood, and then we start getting very, very exciting when you see the indication of age, 10, 20, 30, and so on the label. Now, the age stated is an average age of the wine rather than the youngest age of the wine. And you will see somewhere on the bottle the year it was bottled, as once Tawnies are actually bottled, they are considered fully mature. They are ready to drink. They don't evolve in the bottle. So normally it is best to drink them upon release. Now back to my 1990. It had this sweet and smoky, savoury vibe. It was mixing vanilla fudge with autumn leaves, and you're in your granddad's library whilst he smokes a cigar and you're munching on sugar-powdered almonds. The finish was insane, and it went on forever, and you get all this caramelised almonds and walnuts, but yet it's still so fresh and so elegant and perfect served slightly chilled. This is one of those wines that you can only get your hands on if you go to the lodge, so go. And you can book all different types of tours and tastings from €30, but we went on a slightly more premium tour where you get to chill out in the vintage room, where we could sink in these large leather armchairs, and we also tasted late bottle vintage port with chocolate, a 2007 vintage port with aged cheese, and then, of course, my favourite, a 30-year Tawny with pastel de nata, which remains my favourite pairing of all. So you also get to go around a little museum if you want to go back in history. And what I loved the most for me was a little area highlighting the 10 first families of wine, the Primum Familiae Vinae. Now, these 10 families, they've been recognised for their historical significance, the influence they've had in the wine world, and the quality of their wines. So, of course, first we have the Symington family. They can trace their roots back to the mid-19th century in the Douro. As you already know, they own the Porthouses, Grahams, Dowes, Wares and Cockburns. In 1999, they formed what I think to be one of the most exciting joint ventures, Pratts and Symington, with the Bordeaux family of Bruno Pratts, and they have a stunning wine called Crisea, which is definitely one of the most well-known and highly awarded still reds of the Douro. They own some of the most famous quintas, so Quinta do Vesuvio, that's certainly their flagship estate in the Douro Superior. However, I won't be talking about the Douro Superior on this episode because that is in the furthest east, so it takes longer to get to. However, if you have a much longer trip, definitely get over to the wild and very powerful Douro. This is the hottest, driest and most remote part of the Douro, as opposed to the Cima Corgo, which is the heart of the Douro, and that is where I'll be taking us to on this episode. And for context regarding rain and sunshine, I said the Douro Superior, which is all the way over towards the frontier of Spain. We are talking about 400 millimeters of rain a year. This is a much more continental climate, hot and dry, because it's much further away from the Atlantic. The heart of the Douro, the Cima Corgo, now you're getting around 600 to 700 millimeters of rain. And if you go back to Porto by the Atlantic, we are then talking about 1,200 millimeters of rain. So it really changes the further inland you go. Now, the Symingtons, for me, one of my favourite things about them is their focus on sustainability and viticultural innovation. They were the first wine company in Portugal to earn B Corporation status. They manage many organic hectares. There is an experimental vineyard filled with indigenous varieties and looking at climate change. But let's also touch on the other 9. So you have Antinori from Tuscany in Italy. They have history spanning over 6 centuries and 26 generations. The Antinori family is one of the oldest family-owned businesses in the world, and they played a key role in the Super Tuscan movement. So I'm talking about Tignanello here. Then you have Baron Philippe de Rothchild. I am talking about the prestigious Chateau Mouton Rothchild, a first growth in Bordeaux. So this family is a major force in the fine wine market. They have the partnership with Robert Mondavi in California with Opus One, and in Chile a joint venture with Concha y Toro with their Almaviva wine. In fact, listen out for their mention in next week's episode. I say no more. Then there is Familia Torres, based in Catalonia, but one of the leading names in Spain, and they are known for innovation, experimentation. They're rescuing indigenous grapevines, and they have been named the world's most admired wine brand many times. There's now Torres in Chile, and in fact, I will be releasing an episode in a few weeks with Cristina Torres, who's 5th generation, who is now running Marimar Estate over in Sonoma, California. You also have E&J Gallo Winery. This is the world's largest family-owned winery. They are based in California. They have, I think, over 100 brands, including some of my favourites, Orin Swift and Palmea. Now, jumping back to France, Joseph Drouin, so a highly respected family from Burgundy. They're super historic, producing amazing Pinot and Chardonnay. I think they have vines growing across 90 appellations, and now there is Domaine Drouin in Oregon. Then we have Famille Perrin. So these are the owners of Chateau de Beaucastel. They're super prominent producers in the Rhone Valley, and they're known for their organic and biodynamic farming. And the Perrin family is behind the famous rosé, the chicken wine, and also Miraval that used to be owned by Brangelina. Then we have the Jackson family wines, again from the US, major player in California, and they're known for brands like Kendall Jackson, and they focus on cool climate coastal vineyards. But extra fun fact, the very first English wine made by Jackson Family Wines, a still Chardonnay named Marbury, was released earlier this year. Back to Italy, we have Tenuta San Guido. They are the family behind Sassicaia, so the iconic wine that pioneered the Super Tuscan category and also really established Cabernet Sauvignon in Tuscany. And lastly, we have Vega Sicilia, so an iconic name in Spanish fine wine, producing some of the most sought after age-worthy wines. They are definitely Spain's first growth. Right, well, I just went off on a total segue. Let us finish off our day one in Porto. Now, you could eat at the restaurant at Graham's Lodge. Looks amazing. You've got those views over the old town. It's called Vinham. But I didn't eat there. Instead, I got my €6 taxi back across the river and went to eat at Matriarca. This is owned by the Symington family as well, and it is very, very cool. It is this beautifully restored townhouse, 3 stories. There's a wine shop, the most amazing cocktail bar. I say this because I do not drink cocktails, really, and the thought and flavours that went behind these. Many of them were made from port. You just have to go for a pre-dinner drink to find out for yourself. But every room is just so beautifully thought out, all from recycled materials and restored furniture. So there's this really big sustainability focus there. The wine bar, so it's open, it's warm due to everything's made from light wood, but the whole place, it's rustic, yet it's modern. Then there's nostalgia in the air with these old black and white photos of the family on the walls. And then this makes sense when you find out the Matriarca Wine Club is named after the Symington family's original matriarch in Portugal, who married the first Symington, an Englishman, to live in Porto shortly after arriving in 1882. And she was known for bringing together all the food, wine and good vibes. And so therefore her spirit has inspired the club today. Oh, and it's called a wine club as although all 3 floors are open to everyone, you can become a member and get access to some of the special wines and get involved in harvest up in the Douro, and I'm sure a lot of other things that I don't know. But when you eat here, there's this beautiful blend of British and Portuguese cuisine. I thought prices were super reasonable for the quality you get. €50 for 2 courses, 60 for 3 courses, and if you want the wine pairing, it's an extra €35. Water's included, and the bread. I do not know about you, but when it comes to nice restaurants, it is all about the bread. Well, that and beautiful clean toilets, and then you know you are going to have an amazing meal, and this did not disappoint. And sorry, not to obsess over the bread, but then you get with it this stunning olive oil and 2 different styles of butter. I am here for this kind of attention, and just every dish was perfect. Right. That is day 1. So day 2, and for me, it's all about exploring the Douro Valley. And the best part of this is that traveling by train is not only the cheapest, but it is so romantic. And it's literally like gliding through a living postcard for the last hour. So the journey time is 2 hours 20 to Pinhão. And this is where I recommend you stop because you're really in the middle of the Douro Valley now. The return tickets are about €24. Get on at São Bento station. This is also a must-see on the list of things to do in port. And so you want to give yourself at least an extra 15-20 minutes to take in the azulejo tiles. There is more than 20,000 of them, and they were created by artist Jorge Colasso in the early 1900s, and they all depict scenes from Portuguese history. And the building itself is beautiful with these high ceilings and arches. Now, when you are on the train, make sure you are sat on the right-hand side of the train so you can be alongside the Douro River as the train winds alongside it. And the best bit is the window comes about halfway down so you can stick your head out just like a dog, just like I did. Now, you are going to see the solcalcos. These are the oldest terraces which are built from dry stoned walls. They hold narrow strips of soil on these super steep inclines. So these walls, they represent the immense manual labour, and many are centuries old, and really this is what gives the Douro its UNESCO World Heritage status. But as these only allowed a single row of vines per terrace and are extremely labour intensive and super expensive to maintain, patamares were introduced in the 1970s, 1980s, and these are terraces made from earth, so no stone walls. They're cheaper, they're faster to build. Each terrace is wide enough so it can have 2 rows of vines and tractors can access them. However, the big issue in the Douro is soil erosion, and the patamares are not best suited to handle this issue. But I learnt whilst visiting Taylor's Port Lodge, which I'll come back to in a bit, all about the new laser guided technology being used. So making soil erosion even worse on these steep slopes is the increasingly erratic weather patterns, which often means there's heavy rainfall in one big hit. And then, of course, that means that the water is rushing down the hillsides. It's washing away the topsoil, of which there is very little, and it's super important. And so now with these lasers, they are creating terraces with very precise inclinations. So look out for these new terraces. They are slightly tilted back towards the hillside, so this allows the rainwater to soak into the soil instead of running straight off of it. And they are also inclined just slightly along their length. So if there is excess water, it drains off the ends into these channels that are being built, and it stops the soils eroding down the slope. And you're also going to see that there are vines planted vertically up and down the slope rather than across terraces, and these are called vinha ao alto. They are efficient, they're modern and common in newer quintas as they allow full mechanisation with tractors and harvesters. However, they are only suitable for slopes less than a 30% gradient. Now, I just went to Douro on a day trip, as it's easy enough and beautiful enough to go back and forth in one day. But on hindsight, I would totally look to stay in the Douro and wake up in Pinhão. You have a few options on booking.com under £100 a night if you book with time. But if you are going all out, I can only imagine what it's like to stay at the Vintage House. They're right on the riverfront. They even have their own entrance directly off of the Pinhão train station platform. Price was about £300 a night in September. We did not stay there, but we did eat. And this was, without a doubt, the most peaceful and, I guess you could say, cinematic view whilst dining. You are directly in front of that Douro River, but with this manicured garden just below you with rows of these beautiful, elegant, tall palm trees that just create this perfect Douro postcard image, and the valley's terrace slopes and planted vineyards are just behind it. Nothing I can say can describe the beauty here, but it just feels like time stops. So anyway, if you're eating, which honestly I advise, 3 courses will set you back about 65-70 euros a person. We got to taste some stunning wines, and what I didn't realise is that all the wines we tried, they are owned by the Fladgate partnership. They own way more wineries than just the port lodges like Taylor's, Fonseca and Croft, but also what really stands out are the amazing places that you can stay. Without a doubt, they offer some of the best experiences in the Douro, which we will get onto. But one of the surprises for me, we're drinking away with our food some Quinta do Portal, Grand Reserva, Tinto and Branco. Now these are Douro still wines. Well, interestingly enough, just 20 minutes up the hill is the cellar door for Quinta do Portal, and the Fladgate Partnership recently acquired this winery, which right next door to the cellar door is also the Manor House. The Manor House is this renovated old farm building that's now been transformed into a boutique retreat with 12 rooms. There's a pool surrounded by vineyards. I did not stay there, but visiting was magical. It's just so quiet. It's peaceful. And then when you get thirsty, as I said, right next door is the cellar door. Oh, and bonus, you can even get married here. So if you love vineyards, this is a dream spot. So whereas the vintage house is on the river and is all about luxury, the manor house is kind of more boutique and chilled. And this is around, I think, £130, depending on when you're going to go and visit. Now, halfway down from the manor house, so we're talking 10 minutes up from Pinhão, 10 minutes down from the manor house, there's this stunning viewpoint called São Cristóvão do Douro. But the most famous, if you really want to tick it off your list, is Miradouro Casal de Loivos. But just put Miradouro into Google Maps and you're going to see so many options to enjoy the river from above. Honestly, you can't be unhappy wherever you are in this valley. But back down in town, in Pinhão, a 5-minute taxi ride or 25-minute walk along the river gets you to Quinta da Rueda, home of Croft Port. Now, fun fact, they made the first ever pink port here in 2008 using primarily the very delicate grape variety called Rufete, which most people aren't aware of, but it gives these lovely aromatic notes of red cherries and strawberries. And it wasn't typically valued as a grape variety making port because it's not robust and big and bold and tannic, but it's a grape variety that is perfect for pink port. Now imagine you're sitting on their terrace under wisteria-covered pergolas. You've got this pink port and tonic in your hand. You're looking over the river. It is simply magical. A really beautiful estate. You can tour the winery or take a self-guided walk through the vineyards, the olive trees. I mean, they have 3.3 hectares of vines that were planted since 1915, and the estate itself dates back to 1811. And whilst we were there, we asked about the difference between the three major port houses, Croft, Fonseca and Taylor's, and we were told Fonseca is fruity and expressive, almost Latin-like. Taylor's is a little bit more austere, discreet and a little more closed, and Croft sits somewhere in between. I tasted a whole range of their wines, but I particularly loved their 20-year Tawny. Yes, sorry, Tawny again. Think chocolate, cookies, coffee, biscuits with this touch of maple syrup and walnuts. It's just soft, it's elegant and very easy on the palate. Now, finally, if you still have some time left or you're staying the night, right next to Pinhão train station is Quinta de Bonfim. This is a Symington family estate, and this has long been listed among the world's top vineyards. I think they are currently sitting at number 66 with world's best vineyards this year. Now, getting on to day 3, and you of course have to have a whole day at least to enjoy Porto's historic old town. I'm assuming you've already spent time on the river, you've visited the Bolhão market and São Bento train station, so this is just the time to wander. Rua das Flores is this super cool street with loads to see and eat and experience, and we picked up some lovely artwork there. Markets are everywhere, But my personal favourite was the urban market on Praça das Cardosas. It's just full of all these artisanal treats. There's music playing and there's this chill bohemian vibe. There is so much to see, so it really depends on what you're into. There's also the famous library that inspired the Harry Potter books. However, you need tickets for this and be prepared to queue. So instead, we discovered a street packed with 3 wine bars, Rua de Ferreira Borges. Now, we only popped into one of them. That was Prova. But I highly recommend it. The staff were awesome. And before we knew it, they sensed our passion and were bringing out free sips to compare different Portuguese wineries. Now, in the evening, you have to experience a fado show. Most are held in small, really intimate venues, and they're like tucked under archways. So you're really up close to the musicians. It's very soulful, and you get to experience the iconic Portuguese music. Now, on to the final day, back across the river in Vila Nova de Gaia. You were all expecting me to tell you a little bit about tailors. As I already told you, it was there that I learnt about the laser technology. Honestly, I learnt so much whilst being there. But honestly, the best thing about coming to tailors, if you are a wine lover, is you are going to have a full day of fun, because right opposite tailors, you've got the Yeatman Hotel and their Wow Museum. All I can say is, wow. Honestly, hands down, the Wow Museum is one of my favourite wine discoveries ever. So the views from the Yeatman are absolutely to die for. And Taylor's is just perfect for geeking out over wine. They are open every day, even on Christmas, and have this extensive audio guide in 13 languages, so you can learn as much or as little as you want. You can take your photo in front of a huge vat. They have this little device that will send you the photo to your email. The museum style walk around really lets you dive into the really deepest parts of Douro's history. They've even got a sniffing area, which is always my favourite part. And then there's this rose garden to chill out and relax in afterwards. Taylor's is a winery that always has been quite ahead of the game. So they bought a vineyard in 1774, which at the time was entirely unheard of. The English didn't really go into the Douro. They would have a manager to sort this out for them. So this was very ahead of the game. As was in the 1920s, they started planting rose by grape variety, which was revolutionary at the time. Field blends, so just a mixture of varieties in one area, was the norm. And they were also the first to produce a white port. So we're talking about the chip dry, which is just yummy, lovely peachiness, and it's got these lovely nutty hints, and it's about 20 grams residual sugar per litre compared to the typical red ports at 90 grams, just in case you want to know the difference. I also got to taste the Golden Age 50-year Tawny, a category that's actually only existed since 2022, although Taylor's apparently were pushing for it since 2014. If you fancy that one, it's going to be really fudgy with a touch of licorice and dried figs and this really rum and raisin palette. There's a little bit of orange peel and just loads of these cloves on the finish. Honestly, I could talk about that all day, but I will not, because I want to take us over to the Yeatman to explore their wine offerings and the hotel itself. And again, wow. Their wine list has around 1,700 labels. To give you an idea, World of Fine Wine magazine named it the best hotel wine list in 2021. And in 2025, the Yeatman Gastronomic Restaurant received the Grand Award from Wine Spectator for the second year running as one of only 97 establishments worldwide. And you can book a personalised wine experience here with Elizabeth, the wine director, and her team. And my God, she is incredible. She's so interesting, so funny, so passionate. It was amazing to meet her. and understand what they're offering. This place is all about wine education, and they will tailor your wine experience to you. What do you want to learn? What do you want to try? There's an annual Christmas wine experience if you can get over there in December. This is a luxury hotel, so the spa looks insane. The food, haven't eaten there, is gorgeous. And of course, staying here means soaking in those stunning views. I fell completely in love with Porto, right there, looking down on that river yet again. It is just so special. I don't have the words. And no, staying in this hotel is not going to be a cheap experience. But if you do not have that kind of budget for your trip, just come for a drink. This is a bucket list hotel experience. And now, onto what I can only call the Disneyland of wine experiences. I could actually spend 4 days at the WOW, so World of Wine Museum. I'm not joking. So maybe ignore my 4-day itinerary and book yourself 7 days because WOW is a cultural playground for wine lovers, and especially wine students. If you are studying your WSETs, this place is perfect for you. It is huge. It spans 55,000 square meters of former port cellars, and it includes 7 interactive museum experiences, 12 restaurants and bars. There's shops. There is a wine school, and I feel like you're not going to be surprised to hear me say this. Beautiful terraces overlooking the Douro. Now, among the museums, you're going to find Planet Cork, so you can explore the world of cork from tree to bottle. There's the chocolate story. They make their own chocolate, which of course you can taste alongside their ports. But I can tell you about the wine experience. This museum, you really get to dive into Portugal's wine regions, how soil, climate, and the technique is going to shape the flavors of your wine. And honestly, there was this room, and you have photos, images of vineyards all over the world, and you have to guess which country they are from, and underneath will be the answer. That for me was absolutely fantastic. There is a sniffing station again. It's much bigger than the one at Taylor's. I absolutely loved that. I love the interactive experiences here. You have somebody who's going to take you through a wine tasting as well. Then they've put televisions into oak casks, so you can basically see inside what would happen during fermentation, so you can see that full process. There are interactive walls you can press that light up and show you all the details of photosynthesis, and then areas that let you explore the different soils of Portugal, even cut through displays so you can see the vines and their roots stretching down. You can check out the actual materials used in construction like tiles and bricks and see which soils they came from. There are quizzes to test your knowledge. So by the end of it, you really get how wine is made from the ground up. And if you're after more wine tasting, wine knowledge, there is the wine school. I can't believe there is something like this. You can actually study for your WSET exams here, but you can just rock up every day, I think between 10 a.m. and 7 p.m. for a €25 tasting of several wines. But then you can also have an exclusive wine tasting and everything personalized for you. So we met Diego Ventura, who is the head of the wine school, and he allowed me to choose what I wanted to taste. And so I set him the challenge of bringing me wines that I had most likely never heard of or never tried, or was something incredibly unique. And from that selection, let me tell you just 2 that he pulled out. One was a grape that has nearly gone extinct. This is Terrantes do Pico, made by the Azores Wine Company. This comes from the largest of the wine-producing islands in the Azores, so the Pico Island. And this is a grape variety that's really mineral and saline and fresh. And the other grape I will mention is from Portugal, is from the Douro. But normally we are talking about those famous 5 red grape varieties: Touriga Nacional, Touriga Franca, Tinta Rores, Tinta Barroca, and Tinta Cao. But no, this was a Pinot Noir grown at high altitudes so that it is a lot cooler, so the grape variety can retain its acidity. It's by a producer called Quanta Terra. It's a rosé, and the rosé's name is Phenomena. So there you go, 2 new wines to look up, but it was beautiful to go and have this wine experience with somebody who is so impassioned to show you new wines and bring new experiences to you. So whether you are a wine beginner or a professional in the wine industry, you're going to have an amazing time. Now, to finish off, we ate at the Golden Catch, which is this stunning seafood restaurant. And if you eat outside, surprise, surprise, you can catch those Porto River views. Get there for happy hour, where for €6 you can get some sparkling wine and an oyster. But what I loved about the food options in this place is that there is everything from cafes if you want something quick, or pizza if you don't want to spend too much money. There's their T&C restaurant where you can eat inside an actual oak cask that they have opened up and turned into tables. And you can eat traditional Portuguese food like the famous sandwich, francesinha. There is the more elegant 1828 restaurant where you can get delicious steak. And when you are finally finished for the day and the sun has set, the building itself comes alive with all of these projections over it. It is truly magical. A visit to Porto, Vila Nova de Gaia and the Douro is simply something really, really special. Big thanks to the Fladgate Partnership and Symington Family Estates for hosting me across your wineries, hotels and lodges. What an incredible experience, and I'm very grateful for your generosity and hospitality. Now next week, prepare yourself because I am chatting with the one, the only Tom Gilby. Possibly the most entertaining person in wine, but also famously known for his marathon running wine tasting skills. We will be covering everything from Bordeaux to Chablis to Beaujolais. And now to finish the episode with a wine quote, or more a wine poem. And it goes: if out of sort we stick to port, the medicine of soul, a ruby gleam, a tawny dream, the vintage is the goal. Well, the only goal I wish for all of you this week is to sip slowly and enjoy life's little pleasures. Until next Monday, wine friends, cheers to you.